Welcome to the Selfie Seeker Deep Dive. In today's deep dive, we'll be exploring a really powerful topic. It's inspired by the newly released book, Your Path to Powerful Authenticity in a World That Demands Performance.
That's the one by Hellen Modiba. And this deep dive draws directly from an article she wrote, which connects right into the book's core themes.
Exactly. And the framework we're diving into today is called the 6 Levels of Sovereignty.
Right. It was created by the author, inspired partly by Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, but she's adapted it into something, well, more emotionally grounded, more intuitive, I'd say. It's really a tool for understanding how we navigate through personal challenges, how we connect or sometimes disconnect from our own, inner power.
And today we're going to look at this specifically through the lens of how men navigate crisis and power, especially when the world is constantly demanding performance from them. The article introduces these two characters who really bring this struggle to life. Daniel, who's a rising executive facing serious burnout, and Chris, a husband dealing with the fallout of emotional disconnection after betrayal in his marriage.
Yeah, that focus feels incredibly relevant right now. There's just immense pressure on men, expectations from family, society, even, old stories from childhood. This constant push to climb, to perform. So what happens when that ladder you've been climbing so intensely suddenly feels like it's, well, disappearing or breaking beneath you? And this isn't really about collapse necessarily, but more about what gets revealed in that moment of crisis.
So using this framework, the 6 levels of sovereignty, what is that authentic power? What does sovereignty actually look like when you're facing that kind of intense pressure, those performance demands, and frankly, undeniable pain?
Let's jump into Daniel and Chris's stories as they're laid out in the article. What are they like right when these crises hit?
Okay, so Daniel, he's in his early 30s, and he's really on that classic executive fast track. He's been basically trading everything rest, personal life, deep connection for results at work. You know the type, telling himself things like, oh, I'll settle down after the next promotion, or family can wait until this big deal closes. Classic deferral.
Yeah, delaying life for work.
Exactly. But his body, it had other plans. One morning, he experiences a minor stroke. It leaves his left arm immobile. The article actually calls it a physical intervention because his mind just refused to pause, refused to listen.
Wow, a forced stop. His body basically yelling for attention because his ambition wouldn't let him hear the whispers. And Chris, what's his situation? Chris is a bit older, 45, married 17 years, father of 2 kids. He genuinely thought his marriage was secure. Maybe, not thrilling or vibrant anymore, but stable, solid. Then his wife drops a bombshell. She reveals she's had an affair. And crucially, it wasn't just physical. She tells him she hasn't felt truly seen or connected to him, like really connected, for a very long time.
Oof.
Yeah. Chris thought he was doing enough, right? Providing, being physically present, showing up for things. But that presence, as his wife's confession makes painfully clear, was more like a performance than real, authentic intimacy. So the affair didn't just expose the betrayal, it ripped open this quiet, unacknowledged emptiness that was already there. Maybe in both of them, but definitely within him.
So you have these two really different crises, one medical, one relational, but both fundamentally shattering that illusion of control they built through performance. And the article uses this 6 levels of sovereignty framework to help us understand their internal responses, how they cope or don't cope.
Exactly. Think of it like a map. It shows how men tend to respond when their external world gets shaken up. And that response is based on how connected they are to their inner power, their sort of inner truth. The more sovereign you are, the more capacity you have to meet that pain head on without immediately needing to outsource blame, find a scapegoat,
Right.
You're more likely to stay rooted in what genuinely matters to you, even when everything outside feels like it's falling apart.
So it's less about controlling the storm outside and more about having like a steady internal compass during the storm. Okay, let's walk through these levels. How do Daniel and Chris show up at level 1, survival? What does that look like?
Okay, level 1, survival. The response here is pure reaction. It's driven by almost primal fear and this desperate need to regain control, any control. For Daniel, the stroke feels like a betrayal by his own body. His biggest fear isn't just the health stuff, it's the threat of becoming irrelevant at work. That's the core terror.
His value is tied to performance.
Totally. So rest feels dangerous, like admitting defeat. Productivity is his proof of worth, and now it's completely at risk. So what does he do? He resists the diagnosis. He starts planning his return to work way too early. He downplays everything the doctors are telling him. He's literally fighting reality.
Trying to overpower it. And Chris, How does that survival energy show up for him?
For Chris, it manifests as pure rage. He doesn't talk, he just reacts. He moves out of the house immediately, doesn't say a word. The deepest wound for him isn't just the affair itself, it's the underlying message that he wasn't enough for his wife, that his showing up wasn't real or valuable.
That cuts deep.
It does, and that fear is so huge that he clings to control wherever he possibly can. He tells his kids half-truths about what's going on, trying to manage their perception. He immediately starts, reshaping the narrative of the marriage to protect his own pride, and he gets really fixated on this idea that forgiving his wife would be weak, like losing the battle, losing control.
Okay, so at level 1, whether it's Daniel fighting his own body or Chris fighting his wife, and the truth, the core energy is about trying to overpower the painful feelings, seeing vulnerability as dangerous, basically just trying to stay afloat, even if they're drowning inside.
Yeah, it's a very contracted, very reactive state. Now, from there, some men might shift maybe slightly to level 2, stability. The focus changes a bit, but it's still mostly external. It's about seeking safety, routine, getting validation from the outside world, trying to put things back together on the surface.
So for Daniel, what does that look like? Does he start listening to the doctors?
Sort of. He starts doing some of the right things for his health, but it's very superficial. He'll, eat better, do the prescribed light rehab exercises, maybe log in for some online work. But it's all about checking boxes.
Oh,
He hasn't actually stopped to reflect on why this happened. He's just trying to regain the appearance, the form of his old productive life. It's about getting back to normalcy externally without really addressing the internal crisis that caused the stroke.
got it. Performance over presence, again. And Chris at level 2.
Chris might agree to go to marriage counseling, but the article suggests his motivation is largely about appearances. He doesn't want friends or family, or even himself maybe, to see him as the guy who didn't try to save his marriage.
So he's following the script.
Exactly. Following the script in therapy, but carefully sidestepping the deeper, messier emotional truths. He avoids vulnerability. And the article mentions he even starts dating pretty quickly. Not because he's genuinely ready, but almost as a way to win at the healing process, seeking that external validation that he's still desirable, still okay. Performing, moving on.
It sounds like level 2 is still about control, but it's channeled through managing image and adhering to external forms, looking like you're recovering, but the deep internal work, that's still being avoided. The inner world remains largely off limits.
Precisely. It's a performance of healing, not actual healing.
Okay.
But it's this unvisited inner world where things often start to shift. And that brings us to level 3, awareness.
Okay, so this is where the pain maybe becomes unavoidable, and that kind of forces a look inward.
Often, yeah. Pain can become a teacher here. For Daniel, there's this moment in rehab. He's listening to an older man share his story, pushing too hard, losing his health, losing touch with his family, and something just clicks, or maybe softens, in Daniel. He actually starts journaling for the first time in years. The article notes it's kind of stiff and awkward at first, but crucially, it's honest. He starts asking himself these really basic questions he never considered before, like, do I even know what actually makes me happy separate from my job title or my achievements?
Wow, that's a big question to finally ask.
Huge. And for Chris, the awareness hits in a much more mundane moment. He's folding his daughter's laundry, just a simple chore, and it just breaks him open emotionally. That simple act triggers this raw realization that he deeply misses his family, not just the house or the routine, but the feeling, the actual presence of being connected with them.
The everyday connection.
Yes, he starts taking these long walks alone every morning, but now it's not to escape his thoughts, it's almost to actively feel them, to let them surface. And he finally admits something really profound to his therapist. I don't think I've ever really asked myself what kind of man I actually want to be.
That's powerful. So at level 3, neither Daniel nor Chris really have the answers or solutions yet, but the questions they're finally asking themselves are real. They're honest. The awareness is like cracking open a window into their own inner landscape.
Exactly, and that honest awareness is the absolute foundation for level 4, integrity. This is where a man starts taking responsibility for his part, and this is key, without getting stuck in self-blame or shame. It's about ownership, not fault.
Okay, so how does this play out for Daniel? How does he show integrity?
This is a massive step for him. He starts saying no, like really saying no. He cancels some major meetings, and he tells his team the truth about his health scare, something he'd been terrified to do. It feels scary, but he holds his ground. He actually asks a colleague to genuinely cover for him so he can take a real break. He lets go of that ingrained need to control everything himself. His actions finally start aligning with his newfound awareness of his physical and emotional limits.
That takes courage, shifting from performance to authenticity. And
Mhm.
Chris, how does he step into integrity?
Chris makes a really difficult move, too. He reaches out to his wife, and he apologizes. Importantly, he's not apologizing for her choices, for the affair itself, but for his part, his emotional absence, admitting he'd been, as he put it, emotionally lazy in their marriage.
Owning his contribution to the disconnection.
Yes. And he's honest with her. He says he doesn't know if they can fix the marriage, but he is willing to try to rebuild trust between them. He frames it as a choice he's making from his own integrity, not as a tactic to win her back or perform forgiveness.
Okay, so integrity isn't about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about lining up your actions with your inner truth, even when that's uncomfortable or makes you feel vulnerable.
Right. And that alignment, that's what builds the foundation for the next level, level 5, wholeness.
Wholeness, what does that encompass?
Wholeness is about really reconnecting deeply with yourself, understanding your true purpose beyond just external achievements or roles, and cultivating genuine presence in your life. For Daniel, this means realizing he's been chasing goals that weren't actually his own deep down. They were borrowed from society, from expectations. He starts redefining what success actually means to him personally.
That's a fundamental shift.
It is. And the article notes he makes this huge decision. He turns down the big promotion he'd spent a decade working towards. Instead, he applies for a creative sabbatical program he's always dreamed of. And the feeling he has isn't regret, it's profound relief.
Wow. Prioritizing his own well-being and purpose over the external climb, that's huge. What does wholeness look like for Chris?
For Chris, the focus shifts dramatically. It's no longer about winning his wife back. It's about understanding. He starts genuinely asking her what she needs, listening without trying to fix it or control the outcome. And just as importantly, he starts asking himself that same question: what do I need? He finds a local men's group, and for the first time, he can actually listen to other men share their struggles without comparing his pain or jumping in with advice. He's building real connection, both inward with himself and outward with others.
It sounds like wholeness brings a certain humility, right? It softens the ego's grip. It connects success with meaning. And for Chris, his marriage, whatever its future, starts to function less like a mask he has to wear and more like a mirror, reflecting where he still needs to grow.
Beautifully put. And that naturally leads us to the final level described, level 6. Sovereignty. This isn't represented as some static destination you arrive at, but more as a way of living from a place of inner freedom and embodied truth.
So what does that look like in practice, day to day, for someone like Daniel?
Well, the article paints a picture of Daniel mentoring a younger colleague, but his motivation is different now. It's not about proving his own value or importance anymore. It's about genuinely wanting to pass on the hard-won wisdom he gained through his crisis. His relationships, both personal and professional, are described as slower, deeper, more meaningful. He listens more than he speaks. He's still leading, in a way, but it's leadership that comes from his authentic self, not from performing a role.
That sounds like a much more sustainable way to live and work. And Chris, at level 6.
For Chris, he's rebuilding a friendship with his wife. The outcome of their marriage is still uncertain. Maybe they stay together, maybe they don't. But he's reached a place where he knows he isn't lost, regardless of that outcome. He's become a safe place to land, first and foremost, for himself. He's built that inner stability. And because of that, he can be truly present and safe for others, including his wife and children. The article describes him as softer, yes, but also stronger and more authentically himself than he's ever been before.
It's really fascinating because at this level, power isn't about controlling other people or circumstances anymore, is it? It's about leading yourself from that place of inner freedom.
Exactly. Sovereignty isn't about life suddenly becoming easy or hardship disappearing. It's about the depth of self-connection that allows you to move through the hardships without losing yourself.
It sounds like the core message, as seen through Daniel and Chris, is that sovereignty acts as that inner compass. It doesn't erase pain, but it offers a steady, self-led way through it.
Absolutely. It's that fundamental understanding that even when life throws its worst at you, you still have a choice in your internal experience and how you respond. You have agency.
So that raises a really practical question. How can someone listening right now actually anchor themselves in this idea of sovereignty, especially when life feels overwhelming or uncertain? When you feel that pull back towards those reactive level 1 or 2 states?
Yeah, that's crucial. The article offers a few really grounded practices that can help. The first one is simple, but not easy. Pause and reflect on your feelings. Just notice and name what you're feeling, without needing to immediately fix it, judge it, or push it away. Just creating that little bit of space for your emotions, whatever they are, is the absolute starting point for building self-trust.
That really cuts against that ingrained push-through performance mindset, doesn't it? Suppressing feelings is often seen as strength. Okay, what's another practice?
Identify your core values. Especially in moments of confusion or crisis, ask yourself, okay, what truly matters to me here at the deepest level? Reconnecting with your core values often brings clarity. They act like an anchor in the storm.
Values as anchors, I like that. And then?
Set clear boundaries. This is about communicating what's okay and what's not okay for you. The article uses a helpful image here. Boundaries aren't necessarily walls to shut everyone out. Think of them more like doors with intentional locks. You get to decide who and what you allow into your space and energy.
That feels more empowering than just building walls. Less rigid, more conscious.
It is. Another key practice is to release the need for control. Consciously recognize that some things are simply beyond your ability to control. Instead of wasting energy wrestling with the uncontrollable external factors, focus your energy on what you can choose. Your presence in the moment, your response, your intention.
Right, shifting the focus inward again to where you actually have agency, where you have choices.
Precisely. And perhaps the hardest one sometimes. Trust the journey. Except that not every step will make sense right away. You won't always see the path ahead clearly. But trusting that every part of the journey, even the really difficult, painful parts, has something essential to teach you that trust helps you stay present instead of constantly fighting against what is.
These practices sound straightforward, but putting them into action when you're triggered or scared, that's the real challenge. Which brings us back to just recognizing where you might be right now on this sovereignty scale. You mentioned it's not about judging yourself.
Not at all. It's about honest self-reflection. And often you can feel it physically in your body, in your thinking patterns, even in your breath. For instance, if you're in level 1, survival mode, it often feels like panic, maybe helplessness, or just feeling completely stuck, like you have no options. The question to gently ask yourself then is, what's just one small way I can take back a tiny bit of power or choice right here, right now?
Just finding one small point of agency, okay. And level 2, that reactive power state, what does that feel like?
That often feels like frustration, maybe anger, a tendency to blame others or circumstances, or just a really strong need to control everything and everyone around you. The question to reflect on there is my current reaction actually creating more peace for me, or is it just deepening the struggle?
Focusing on the actual outcome of the reaction, that's insightful. And level 3, ego empowerment, performing strength.
Yeah, this is where you might feel that strong pull for external validation. You might be doing things to look strong or competent for others. The self-inquiry question here is, am I doing this primarily for me, for my own authentic reasons, or am I doing it mainly to prove something to someone else, or even to prove something to myself?
That distinction between intrinsic motivation and external validation feels really key. Moving up to level 4, intellectual sovereignty.
This level feels more grounded. Thoughtful awareness and honest self-reflection start becoming more consistent. The guiding question here might be, what would it look like to truly honor my own truth in this situation, even if it's difficult or unpopular?
Honoring that truth, even when it comes at a cost. Okay, level 5, spiritual sovereignty.
This often manifests as a feeling of deeper peace, a genuine respect for yourself and others, and a stronger sense of presence in the moment. The question becomes, am I living in alignment with my highest values right now in this moment?
Connecting actions back to those core values moment by moment. Got it. And finally, level 6, transcendent sovereignty.
This is described as a state that feels like a profound sense of inner freedom, a capacity perhaps for love without grasping or needing things to be a certain way, a deep trust in life, even when things are uncertain. The question that might resonate here is something like, can I fully trust life exactly as it is unfolding right now?
Those questions are powerful tools for self-reflection. And it's clear from Daniel and Chris's journeys that reaching level 6, or even just moving up a level, isn't some quick fix or an overnight leap. It's a process, often sparked by crisis, right?
It really is, and the article makes this crucial point. So many men simply haven't been given a map like this one. They've often only been taught one way to be. Be strong, push through, prove yourself, perform. But as we saw with Daniel and Chris, strength without self-awareness isn't really power, it's just pressure. And that pressure tends to harden a man, isolate him, and hide his true self away.
It sounds like the author observed that lack of inner tools often leads men to kind of collapse inward when things get tough.
That's exactly the observation shared in the source material. The author noticed that women often had more access to spaces or tools for emotional processing, things like journaling, close confiding friendships, talking circles, maybe therapy was more normalized. But many men lacked these resources or permissions. So when crisis hit, without that inner compass, they often lost their way.
And that's really where the book, Your Path to Powerful Authenticity, comes in, to serve as that kind of guide or compass.
Yes, precisely. The book is designed to be like a journal, a guide, a private space for men to do this essential inner work, to help them connect with their inner sense of home, their heart, with what genuinely matters to them, ideally before a major crisis forces the issue, before the latter disappears or the connection goes cold.
It's such a powerful reminder that regardless of where you find yourself on this scale today, whatever challenges you might be facing, it is truly never too late to begin that journey inward. So for you, listening right now, maybe just take a moment. Notice where you might be operating from today. Is it mostly reactivity, disconnection, trying to control everything, or perhaps you already feel a deeper sense of alignment with your own truth?
We really hope that hearing about Daniel and Chris and exploring this framework maybe offers a useful mirror, perhaps some guidance for your own path forward.
And to wrap up this deep dive, we just want to leave you with those two key reflective questions to perhaps sit with today. First, what level of sovereignty do I recognize myself in right now?
And second, what might it look like, just realistically, to respond to my current situation from the next level up? Just one step.
And if you'd like some support with that reflection, you can click the link in the video description. There's a free PDF tool available to download that will guide you in working with these questions. It's designed to help you realign with your own sovereignty, no matter what challenges today's deep dive might have stirred up.